The training hall of Threshold 9 Station echoed with the sounds of combat. Metal struck against metal. Bodies slammed into padded floors. Alien species from across the galaxy sparred with each other, testing their strength and speed. In the center of it all stood Hana Kim, a small human woman who barely reached the shoulders of most other trainees. She held up her training gloves, trying to block the incoming strikes from her opponent. The Vrax warrior in front of her was twice her size, with blue scaled skin and arms thick as tree trunks. He moved slowly, almost bored, as he landed hit after hit on her defense. Hannah stumbled backward with each impact, her arms shaking from the force. "Pathetic," Commander Tholvex called out from the sidelines. He was the head combat instructor, a massive Vrax with scars covering his face. "This is what Earth sends us? Weak creatures who can barely stand after a few light taps." The other trainees laughed. Some were Kelth, fast reptilian beings with 4 arms. Others were Brontus, walking tanks covered in natural armor plating. All of them looked at Hana with the same expression, pity mixed with contempt. Hana's opponent struck her square in the chest. She flew backward and hit the mat hard. The air rushed from her lungs. She lay there for a moment, gasping, trying to catch her breath. The medical scanner on the wall beeped, showing her vitals were still in acceptable range. Barely. "Get up, human," Tholvex said. "Or quit now and save us all the trouble." Hannah slowly pushed herself to her feet. Her legs wobbled. She raised her gloves again, but her arms shook so badly she could hardly keep them up. The Vrax warrior looked at the commander, clearly asking if he should continue. "One more round," Tholvex said with a cruel smile. "Let's see if humans have any endurance at all." The beating continued for another 2 minutes. When it finally ended, Hana collapsed to her knees. Blood dripped from her nose. Her left eye was already swelling shut. The medical drone flew over and scanned her, beeping warnings about potential concussion. In the locker room afterward, Hannah sat alone on a bench. Her entire body ached. She pressed an ice pack against her face and winced. The door opened and 2 other humans walked in. Jingwoo Park was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and kind eyes. Mayan Choi was smaller, with sharp features and an athletic build. "Hannah," Jinwoo said softly. He sat down beside her. "You need to talk to the medical staff. Request a transfer to a different program." "There's no shame in it?" "He's right," Mayan added. She stood in front of Hana, arms crossed. "This Guardian Corps training is killing you. We've been here 3 months, and you've been hospitalized twice. The aliens will never accept you as an equal. They think humans are the weakest species in the coalition." Hannah lowered the ice pack. Her good eye looked at them both. "I can handle it." "No, you can't," Jingwoo said firmly. "I watched that sparring match. You couldn't land a single hit. Your defense was full of holes. And that was against a Vrax who was holding back. In a real combat situation, you'd be dead in seconds." "I'll get better," Hana said quietly. Mayan shook her head. "Better? Hana, you're ranked last in every category. Dead last. Combat efficiency, tactical awareness, physical endurance, weapons proficiency. Every single evaluation puts you at the bottom. The only reason they haven't kicked you out yet is because Earth has a guaranteed 3 slots in each training cohort." Hana stood up slowly, every movement causing pain. She walked to her locker and opened it. Inside was a clean uniform and some personal items. A small photo of Earth hung on the inside of the door. She stared at it for a long moment. "I'm not quitting," she said. Jinwoo and Mayan exchanged worried glances. They tried to say more, but Hana gathered her things and left the locker room. She walked through the corridor of the station, past groups of alien trainees who pointed and whispered as she passed. Some laughed openly. Others just shook their heads. The human quarters were in the oldest section of Threshold 9. The rooms were small, and the artificial gravity sometimes flickered. Hannah entered her room and locked the door behind her. She dropped her bag on the floor and sat on the edge of her narrow bed. For several minutes, she just sat there in silence. Then she stood and walked to the small mirror mounted on the wall. She studied her reflection. The swollen eye, the bruises forming on her cheeks, the split lip. She looked exactly like what everyone thought she was. Weak, fragile, barely holding on. Hannah touched the mirror's surface. A hidden scanner read her fingerprint. The mirror's image flickered and changed, showing a different interface. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Mission parameters. Intelligence reports. Encrypted communications. She typed quickly, her fingers no longer shaking. Her posture changed. The exhausted slump disappeared, replaced by something else. Something focused and dangerous. A message appeared on the screen from her handler at Earth's Shadow Command. Status report required. Target identified? Hannah typed her response. Negative. Continuing observation. Suspicions confirmed regarding conspiracy within coalition leadership. Need more time to identify all players. Maintaining cover as weak trainee. The response came back immediately. Understood. Be advised. Trials of worth announced for next week. Bottom 10 performers face expulsion. Your current ranking puts you at risk. Hannah allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't the expression of someone afraid. Acknowledged. Will adjust performance as needed without breaking cover. She closed the interface, and the mirror returned to normal. Her reflection showed the same battered, exhausted woman as before. Hannah stripped off her training uniform and stepped into the small shower. The hot water stung against her bruises, but she welcomed the pain. It made the act more believable. After the shower, she dressed in simple civilian clothes. She waited until the station's clock showed 0200 hers, the middle of the night cycle, when most trainees were asleep. She left her room quietly and moved through the corridors like a shadow. The restricted training halls were in the lower levels of Threshold 9. They required special clearance that Hannah wasn't supposed to have. But the security badge she pulled from her pocket was a perfect forgery. It opened every door without triggering any alarms. The training hall was dark when she entered. Massive and empty. Equipment lined the walls. Holographic projectors hung from the ceiling. Hannah walked to the center of the room and stood perfectly still. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Computer, she said quietly. Activate training program, Kim 77. Authorization Shadow Actual. The room hummed to life. Lights blazed. Holographic opponents materialized around her. They were perfect recreations of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. Vrax champions. Kelth assassins. Brontu siege breakers. All set to maximum difficulty. Hannah opened her eyes. They were cold now, empty of the fear and exhaustion she showed during the day. She dropped into a fighting stance that was perfect in every way, balanced, centered, ready. The first holographic opponent charged at her. Hannah moved, and the real training began. The maintenance worker's name was Trell, a small insectoid alien who kept the station's lower levels running. He had worked at Threshold 9 for 8 years and thought he had seen everything. But the footage on his security tablet made him stop walking and stare. The timestamp showed 237 hours from 2 nights ago. Camera 14, Restricted Training Hall 3. The room should have been empty. Instead, it showed a human woman fighting against holographic opponents. But this wasn't normal training. This was something else entirely. Trell watched as the human moved through 5 opponents without stopping. She flowed like water, striking with precision that made the holograms flicker and fail. Her movements were too fast for the camera to fully capture. One moment she was blocking a strike. The next she had disarmed her opponent and was using their own weapon against them. He scrolled to another file. Same woman, different night. This time she fought barehanded against a holographic Vrax warrior twice her size. The simulation was set to maximum difficulty, something even experienced guardians rarely attempted. The human won in under 30 seconds. Trell's antenna twitched nervously. He knew this human. Everyone on the station knew her. Hana Kim, the weakest trainee in the current cohort. The human who could barely survive a single sparring round. Except the woman in this footage was not weak. She was terrifying. He watched more files. Each one showed her mastering different combat styles. In one, she used rapid strikes and knee attacks that looked impossibly brutal. In another, she grappled with her opponent and locked their joints until the hologram couldn't move. In a third, she used weapons he had never seen before, spinning sticks that cracked against holographic skulls with lethal force. Trell checked the access logs. The security badge used to enter the room was registered to a maintenance supervisor who had transferred off the station 6 months ago. Someone had forged credentials. Someone had been training in secret for a long time. He should report this. Unauthorized use of restricted facilities was a serious violation. But something stopped him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that he had always felt bad for the human trainees, who were treated so poorly by the others. Or maybe it was because part of him wanted to see what would happen when everyone else found out what this human could really do. Trell deleted the access alerts from the system and encrypted the video files in his personal storage. Then he continued his rounds, saying nothing. Meanwhile, Hannah sat through another morning briefing in the main lecture hall. Commander Tholvex stood at the front, his massive frame casting a shadow over the seated trainees. He was talking about the upcoming Trials of Worth, a 3-day competition that happened every quarter. The trials will test everything you have learned, Tholvex said, his voice booming through the hall. Combat, tactics, endurance, and mental fortitude. Those who fail will be removed from the program. We have no room for weakness in the Guardian Corps. His eyes swept across the assembled trainees and stopped on the 3 humans sitting in the back row. Hana sat between Jinwoo and Mayan, her posture slumped and tired. She looked like she was barely paying attention. The bottom 10 performers will be expelled immediately, Tholvex continued. Based on current rankings, we all know who will be leaving us. He smiled coldly at Hana. Perhaps it's for the best. Some species simply aren't meant for combat. Snickers and laughs echoed through the hall. A large Brontoos named Krell turned in his seat to look at the humans. At least the other 2 humans try. That one just wastes everyone's time. More laughter. Hannah didn't react. She kept her eyes forward, her expression blank. Jingwoo clenched his fists, but said nothing. Mayan looked away. Embarrassed after the briefing ended, the trainees filed out. Jingwoo and Mayan caught up with Hannah in the corridor. Jinwoo grabbed her arm gently, stopping her. You heard what he said, Jinwoo told her urgently. Bottom 10 get expelled. You're ranked last, Hana. Dead last. The trials start in 5 days. I know, Hana said quietly. Then do something. Mayan said, her voice rising. Train harder. Ask for help. Request remedial sessions. Something. Hana looked at them both. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something that made Jinwoo take a step back. Then it was gone, replaced by the same tired expression as before. Don't worry about me, Hana said. I'll be fine. She walked away before they could respond. Jinwoo and Mayan watched her go, both wearing expressions of frustration and sadness. She's going to get expelled, Mian said softly, and there's nothing we can do about it. That night, Hana returned to the restricted training halls. She had already reviewed the security footage and knew that Trell had discovered her sessions. She had watched him through the station's camera network as he encrypted the files, instead of reporting them. Interesting. She would need to be more careful, but for now, her secret was safe. The holographic opponents materialized around her. Tonight she was working on Krav Maga, a combat system designed for real-world situations where there were no rules. The holograms attacked without mercy. Using weapons and multiple opponents to overwhelm her dot, Hana moved through them like a blade through water. She redirected a strike meant for her head and used the momentum to throw her attacker into two others. She disarmed an opponent with a knife and used it to slash through the hologram's defenses. When three opponents grabbed her from different angles, she dropped her weight, broke one grip, and used the confusion to escape. Computer, increase difficulty by 20%, she said calmly. The holograms responded instantly. They moved faster, struck harder, and coordinated better. Hana adjusted her tactics, switching between defensive and offensive techniques seamlessly. This was what she had been doing for 16 years, before coming to Threshold 9, before the mission that required her to pretend to be weak. She had been 12 years old when Earth's Shadow Command recruited her. Humanity had just joined the Galactic Coalition and quickly realized they were viewed as the weakest species. Physically smaller, less durable, slower to heal than most aliens. The perfect undercover operatives. Shadow Command trained her in every combat system Earth had ever developed. Thousands of years of human warfare, condensed into brutal training that nearly broke her. She learned how to fight with her hands, with weapons, with anything she could find. More importantly, she learned how to hide what she could do, how to make others underestimate her, how to be invisible until the moment she chose to strike. The mission brief had been clear. Infiltrate the Guardian Corps' training program. Act weak and incompetent. Observe the alien trainees and instructors. Gather intelligence on a suspected conspiracy within Coalition leadership. Report back to Earth. It had been 3 months of careful acting. 3 months of taking beatings she could have easily avoided. 3 months of watching her fellow humans suffer because they were associated with her. Jinwoo and Ma Yan didn't know the truth. Nobody did. That was the hardest part. The holographic session ended 2 hours later. Hana stood in the center of the training hall, barely breathing hard. Around her, 15 holographic opponents lay defeated. The computer chimed and displayed her performance metrics. Perfect scores across every category dot. She accessed the hidden communication channel on her wrist device. A message waited from her handler. Update. Trials of Worth may be the opportunity we need. Commander Tholvex is suspected as key conspirator. He has scheduled private meetings during the trials with unknown contacts. Recommend you advance far enough to observe these meetings without revealing full capabilities. Hana typed her response. Understood. Will maintain cover while advancing. Estimate I can reach middle rankings without drawing excessive attention. Negative. The response came back. New intelligence suggests conspirators are planning something during the trials. Unknown nature. Maybe assassination attempt or sabotage. Recommend you prepare for emergency extraction if cover is blown. Hana frowned. This mission was supposed to be observation only. If something went wrong during the trials, if she had to reveal her abilities to save lives, everything she had endured for 3 months would be wasted. But she couldn't let innocent people die either. Acknowledged, she typed. Will adapt as situation develops. She deleted the conversation and left the training hall. As she walked through the dark corridors back to her quarters, she passed a viewing window that looked out into space. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere out there was Earth. Waiting for her report, Hannah pressed her hand against the cold glass. She thought about Jinwoo and Mayan, who genuinely cared about her despite thinking she was weak. She thought about Trell, the maintenance worker, who had chosen to keep her secret. She thought about all the other trainees who had mocked her, not knowing what she really was. In 5 days, the trials would begin. And one way or another, everything was going to change. The arena was packed with spectators. Every trainee not competing in the current round filled the viewing sections, along with instructors and station personnel. The Trials of Worth were the most watched event at Threshold 9, where careers were made or destroyed in a matter of hours. Hannah stood in the preparation area with 19 other competitors. This was the first day of trials, and the challenge was simple: one-on-one combat in a zero-gravity arena. Each fighter would face 3 opponents of increasing difficulty. Winners advanced. Losers went home. She stretched slowly, making a show of warming up her muscles. Around her, other competitors looked confident and strong. A Kelth female named Suri did backflips between the pillars, showing off her 4-armed agility. A Brontus male called Thorak punched the practice dummy so hard it flew across the room. They didn't even glance at Hannah Jinwoo, and Mayan found her in the crowd. They had both passed their earlier rounds and were done for the day. Mayan grabbed Hannah's shoulder, her face worried. "Your first match is against a Kelth fighter," Mayan said. "He's fast, really fast. You need to protect your head and look for openings. And your second match is against a Vrax," Jinwoo added. "But if you can just survive the first round, that might be enough to avoid being in the bottom 10. Hannah nodded slowly. "I understand. Just be careful, okay?" Mayan said softly. The announcement system crackled to life. "Competitor Hannah Kim, report to Arena 3. Hannah walked toward the entrance tunnel. Behind her, she heard other competitors making bets on how quickly she would lose. Someone said 30 seconds. Another said 15. They all laughed. Arena 3 was a spherical chamber 50 meters across. The gravity generators were disabled, making everything float weightlessly. Handholds and push-off points dotted the walls, allowing fighters to navigate the space. Hannah drifted into the center, pushing off gently from the entrance platform. Her opponent was already waiting. A lean Kelth male with green scales and 4 arms, each one holding a different position. He grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. The referee, a floating drone, positioned itself between them. Standard combat rules: no killing strikes. Fight ends when one competitor is unconscious or surrenders. Begin! The Kelth launched himself forward with blinding speed. All 4 arms struck at once, creating a whirlwind of attacks. Hannah twisted desperately, trying to block. His fists connected with her sides, her shoulders, her legs. She spun away, hitting the far wall with a painful thump. The crowd groaned. In the viewing section, Jinwoo covered his eyes. Hannah pushed off. The wall, moving slowly and awkwardly in the zero gravity. The Kelth pursued, landing more strikes. Each hit sent her tumbling through space. She looked terrified, her arms flailing as she tried to defend herself. But something was happening that only a very careful observer would notice. Each time Hannah tumbled, she ended up closer to SP, Pacific handholds. Each time she blocked, she absorbed the impact at angles that sent her toward advantageous positions. It looked like panic and luck. It was actually perfect calculation. The Kelth grew confident and careless. He launched a powerful 4-armed strike meant to end the fight. Hannah seemed to stumble backward, spinning out of control. At the last second, her hand caught a wall grip. She used it to change direction instantly, and her foot came up in a kick that caught the Kelth square in his exposed throat. The Kelth's eyes went wide. He grabbed his throat with all 4 arms, gasping. Hana pushed off and delivered 2 more precise strikes to nerve clusters on his shoulders. The Kelth's arms went limp. He floated there, stunned and unable to move. The referee drone scanned him. Competitor disabled. Winner, Hana Kim. The crowd went silent for a moment, then erupted in confused chatter. Hana floated back to the exit platform, breathing hard and looking surprised by her own victory. Jingwu and Mayan were staring at her, with their mouths opened out in the competitor area. Fighters who had been laughing before now looked uncertain. One lucky win could be chance, but the precision of those strikes had been unusual. Hana's second match came 3 hours later. Her opponent was a young Vrax warrior who looked nervous. He had probably been told to go easy on the weak human. The fight started, and Hana immediately went on the defensive, blocking and dodging. The Vrax pressed his advantage, throwing powerful punches that would have shattered bones if they connected. Hana let him tire himself out, then caught his arm during an overextended punch. Using his own momentum and leverage, she flicked him in the zero gravity and locked his arm behind his back. The Vrax struggled but couldn't break free. After 30 seconds of useless fighting, he tapped out. 2 wins. The crowd was beginning to pay attention now. Hana Kim, the weakest trainee, had just defeated 2 opponents without taking serious damage. The betting pools started shifting their odds. On the second day of trials, the challenges changed to tactical scenarios and team combat. Hana continued her pattern of looking weak in early stages, but finding ways to win through what appeared to be luck and determination. She stumbled into correct positions. She accidentally triggered traps that caught her opponents. She made clumsy moves that somehow worked perfectly. By the end of day 2, she had risen from last place to middle rankings. Not high enough to draw serious attention, but high enough to avoid expulsion. Exactly as she had planned. That evening, Commander Tholvex stood in the instructor's observation room, watching replay footage of Hana's matches. His eyes narrowed as he studied her movements. Something was wrong. He couldn't identify what exactly, but his warrior instincts told him the human was not what she appeared to be. He sent a message to someone off station. The response came back quickly. Understood. We'll move up our timeline. Tomorrow, during the final challenge. The 3rd day of trials arrived. The final challenge was announced. A combat gauntlet where each competitor had to fight their way through a series of opponents until they either won or were defeated. The competitor who defeated the most opponents would be ranked first. Anyone who failed to defeat at least 3 opponents would be expelled. Hana stood in the preparation area, going through her normal routine of nervous stretching and deep breathing. Around her, the remaining competitors prepared for their matches. Only 50 trainees remained from the original 100 who had started 3 days ago. The gauntlet began. One by one, competitors entered the arena and fought. Some did well, defeating 5 or 6 opponents. Others barely managed 3 before collapsing. The medical drones were busy carrying injured fighters to the station's hospital wing, and it was Hana's turn. She walked into the arena and faced her first opponent, a medium-sized Brontus. She defeated him using a joint lock after 2 minutes of fighting. The second opponent, a Kelth, fell to a well-placed strike to her nervous system. The third, another Vrax, was submitted after Hana somehow tangled his legs during a grapple. 3 wins. Enough to pass. The crowd expected her to stop and leave the arena. Instead, Hana signaled that she wanted to continue. Her fourth opponent was the large Brontus named Krell. He was the one who had mocked her constantly since day 1 of training. He was also ranked in the top 5 of all trainees. When his name was called, he smiled cruelly and jumped into the arena. Finally, Krell said, his voice booming, "I've been waiting for this. Time to show everyone what humans are really worth. Nothing." The crowd went wild. This was the matchup they wanted to see. The weak human against the elite Bronto's warrior. It wasn't a question of if Krell would win, but how badly he would hurt her first dot. The referee drone signaled the start of the match. Krell charged forward like a tank, his armored fists raised. He was 3 times Hana's size and 50 times her weight. When he threw a punch, it created wind pressure that pushed objects away. Hana tried to dodge, but wasn't fast enough. The punch caught her in the shoulder and sent her flying across the arena. She hit the wall and crumpled to the ground. The crowd cheered. Krell walked toward her slowly, enjoying the moment. Hana struggled to stand. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead. She raised her hands weakly, but they were shaking. Krell laughed and struck her again, a body blow that lifted her off her feet. She collapsed, gasping dot in the viewing area. Mayan stood up. Stop the fight. She's going to get killed. But Jinwoo grabbed her arm. He was staring at Hana with a strange expression. Wait, look at her eyes. Hana was on her hands and knees, her head down. Blood dripped onto the arena floor. Krell stood over her, raising his fist for what would probably be the final blow. The crowd was screaming for him to finish it. Then Hana lifted her head. Her eyes were different. Cold. Empty. Focused. She looked at Krell like he was already dead. She whispered, but in the silence of the moment, her words carried through the arena audio systems. Enough. What happened next took exactly 15 seconds, but those who watched it would remember every detail for the rest of their lives. Hana exploded upward from her kneeling position. Her movement was so fast that Krell's brain couldn't process it. She struck him in 7 different points on his body, each strike hitting a nerve cluster with surgical precision. Krell's arms went numb. His legs locked up. He couldn't even scream. Hana spun behind him and struck the back of his knee. The massive Brontos toppled forward. Before he hit the ground, Hana was already moving again, her hands and feet flowing through forms that looked like deadly dancing. She struck his temples, his throat, his spine. Krell crashed face first onto the arena floor. He didn't get up. He couldn't get up. His entire body was paralyzed except for his eyes, which were wide with shock and terror. The arena fell completely silent. Then the alarms started blaring. The station shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red throughout. Threshold 9. The alarm system blared a warning that made everyone's blood run cold. All personnel, this is not a drill. The station is under attack. Report to emergency stations immediately. Trainees proceed to evacuation pods. This is not a drill. Panic erupted in the arena viewing sections. Trainees scrambled for the exits. Instructors shouted orders that nobody could hear over the noise. Another explosion rocked the station, and several people fell as the artificial gravity flickered. Hana stood perfectly still in the center of the arena, her cold eyes scanning everything around her. She touched her wrist device and pulled up the station's security network. What she saw made her jaw tighten. 20 vessels had emerged from dark space right on top of Threshold 9, Korth Dominion ships. The conspiracy she had been investigating wasn't just internal politics. It was an invasion. Commander Tholvex appeared on the arena's main screen. His expression was different now. Not the cruel instructor, but something else. Something satisfied and dark. All trainees, evacuate immediately. Instructors, defensive positions. This station is being transferred to Korth control. Do not resist, and you will not be harmed. Transferred. Not attacked. Transferred. Tholvex wasn't trying to defend the station. He was helping the enemy take it. Hana moved. She ran to the arena exit, where Jinwoo and Mayan were frozen in shock, staring at the screens. She grabbed them both. We need to move. Now? What's happening? Mayan asked, her voice shaking. The Korth Dominion? They're supposed to be 3 sectors away. They're here because someone let them in, Hana said. And we're not evacuating. What are you talking about? Jinwoo grabbed her shoulder. We have to get to the pods. Hana looked at him with those same cold eyes she had used on Krell. The evacuation pods are a trap. Tholvex is going to jettison them into space where the Korth ships will capture everyone. The trainees are going to be hostages or worse. How do you know that? Mayan demanded. Because I've been investigating this conspiracy for 3 months, Hana said flatly. My name is Captain Hana Kim, Earth's Shadow Command. I'm a covert operative. Everything you've seen from me was an act. Jinwoo and Mayan stared at her like she had grown a second head. Around them, other trainees ran past toward the evacuation routes. Another explosion shook the station. We don't have time for explanations, Hana said. She pulled a small device from a hidden pocket in her uniform and pressed it against a wall panel. The panel sparked and slid open, revealing a weapons cache that shouldn't exist. Human weapons. Military grade. She grabbed a pistol and 2 combat knives, checking them with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. You're serious, Jinwoo said slowly. You're actually a soldier. Yes, and right now, I need you both to trust me. Can you do that? Mayan and Jinwoo looked at each other, then back at Hana. They nodded. Good. Stay behind me and do exactly what I say. Hana led them away from the evacuation routes and deeper into the station. They moved through maintenance corridors that most people didn't know existed. Behind them, they could hear weapons fire and screaming. The Korth soldiers had breached the station's outer sections. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 Korth warriors. The aliens were large, covered in dark armor, carrying plasma rifles. They saw the 3 humans and raised their weapons. Hana moved before they could fire. She threw one of her knives with perfect accuracy, and it sank into the gap between one soldier's helmet and chest plate. He went down hard. She dropped low and swept the legs of the second soldier, then drove her other knife up through his armor's weak point at the neck. The third soldier managed to fire, but Hana had already rolled aside. She came up with her pistol and put 3 rounds through his visor. The entire fight took 5 seconds. Jinwoo and Mayan stood frozen, their mouths open. They had just watched their supposedly weak squadmate kill 3 armed soldiers like it was nothing. Move, Hana said, already heading down the corridor. They passed more bodies as they went deeper. Some were station security. Others were trainees who had been caught in the wrong place. Hana's expression never changed. She kept her weapon ready and her movements precise. This wasn't the clumsy, tired woman they had known. This was a predator in her natural environment. They reached an intersection where more Korth soldiers had gathered, 8 of them setting up a defensive position. Hana pulled Jinwoo and Mayan into cover behind a support pillar. There's too many, Mayan whispered. We need to find another way. No time, Hana said. She checked her pistol's ammunition. 7 rounds left. Not enough for 8 soldiers. She looked at Jinwoo. Can you shoot? I've done basic firearms training. Good enough. She pulled out another pistol from her hidden weapons cache and handed it to him. When I move, you cover me. Aim for center mass. Don't think, just shoot. Wait, what are you? Hana didn't wait. She burst from cover and ran straight at the Korth position. The soldiers were so surprised by the frontal assault that they hesitated for half a second. That was all she needed. She slid under the first soldier's rifle burst and came up inside his guard, using him as a shield while she fired at 2 others. The shield soldier went down, and she kept moving, flowing between enemies like water. One tried to grab her, but she twisted out of his grip and broke his arm at the elbow. Another swung his rifle like a club, and she ducked under it, sweeping his legs and putting a round through his helmet as he fell. Jingwu fired from cover, his shots wild, but enough to keep the remaining soldiers distracted. Hana used the confusion to close on another enemy, disarming him and using his own weapon against his comrade. In 30 seconds, all 8 soldiers were down. Hana stood among the bodies, breathing slowly and steadily. Her uniform was splattered with blood, but none of it was hers. She looked back at Jingwu and Mayan. "We need to reach the command center. That's where Tholvex will be." They made their way through the station, fighting past more Korth soldiers. Hana moved through them like she had during her secret training sessions, using every combat form she had mastered. She used Muay Thai elbow strikes to shatter visors, Jiu-Jitsu joint locks to disable armored opponents, Krav Maga techniques to disarm and counterattack. Every movement was efficient and deadly. Yeon picked up a rifle from a fallen soldier and discovered she was actually a good shot. Jingwu stayed close to Hana, watching her back and following her commands. They moved as a team, and gradually Jingwu and Mayan began to understand. This was what Hana had always been. Not weak, not clumsy, but a perfectly trained weapon waiting for the moment she was needed. They reached the command center to find the doors sealed. Inside, through the reinforced windows, they could see Commander Tholvex standing with several other instructors who were also traitors. They were communicating with someone on the main screens. Hana planted explosive charges on the door, small military devices that shouldn't be possible for a trainee to have. She set the timer and pulled Jingwu and Mayan back around the corner. The explosion blew the doors inward. Hana charged through the smoke, her weapons ready. The traitor instructors tried to fight back, but they had never seen a human in true combat before. They had only seen the act, the weakness. The lie. Hana showed them the truth. She moved through them like a storm. One instructor tried to use his superior Vrak's strength against her, and she used his own momentum to throw him through a computer console. Another attempted to shoot her, and she disarmed him so fast his brain couldn't process what happened. A third came at her with combat training, and she destroyed him using techniques from 7 different martial arts in combination. Then it was just her and Commander Tholvex. The massive Vrak's commander looked at her with shock and something that might have been fear. "You, what are you?" "Human," Hana said simply. Tholvex roared and charged. He was a trained warrior with decades of experience and the natural advantages of his species. He was bigger, stronger, and faster than any human had a right to beat. But Hana had spent her entire life learning how to beat opponents exactly like him. She didn't try to match his strength. She used it against him. When he punched, she wasn't there. When he grabbed, she slipped away like smoke. She struck at his weak points, the places where even Vrak's armor had gaps, nerves, joints, pressure points. Tholvex grew frustrated and sloppy. His attacks became wild. Hana stayed calm and clinical, breaking him down piece by piece. A strike to his knee that made his leg buckle. A blow to his elbow that numbed his arm. A precise hit to his temple that made his vision blur. Finally, she caught him in an arm lock that even his Vrak strength couldn't break. She had the leverage and the technique. Physics didn't care about species. Tholvex struggled for a moment, then went still as his shoulder joint began to separate. "Why?" He gasped. "Humans are weak. Everyone knows this." Hana leaned close to his ear and whispered, "We let you think that. It's easier to fight an enemy who underestimates you." She struck the back of his head, and Tholvex went unconscious. Hana dropped him and moved to the command console. Her fingers flew across the controls, accessing systems and sending emergency signals. Within minutes, she had taken control of the station's defenses and sent a priority distress call to coalition forces. Jinwoo and Mayan watched her work, still trying to process everything they had witnessed. The woman they thought they knew didn't exist. This person, this soldier, this was the real Hana Kim. "Help is coming," Hana said, finishing her work. "Coalition fleet will be here in 20 minutes. We need to hold the command center until then." She turned to face them, and for the first time since the attack started, she smiled. It wasn't a cold smile. It was tired and real. "I'm sorry I lied to you both. I'm sorry you had to see this side of me. But I need your help to finish this. Will you fight with me?" Jinwoo and Mayan looked at each other. Then Jinwoo picked up a rifle from the floor and checked the charge. Mayan did the same. "Always," Jinwoo said. The three humans prepared to defend the command center against whatever came next. The Korth soldiers came in waves. They had numbers and heavy weapons. But the command center had defensive positions, and the three humans knew how to use them. More importantly, they had something the Korth didn't expect. They had Hana Kim. She directed Jinwoo and Mayan to cover positions and taught them proper firing techniques in between enemy assaults, where to aim on armored targets, how to conserve ammunition, when to fall back and when to hold the line. She moved between positions like a chess master, always 3 steps ahead of the enemy. During a brief pause in the fighting, Mayan reloaded her rifle with shaking hands. She looked at Hana, who was calmly checking the tactical displays. "How long have you been doing this?" Mayan asked. "Really doing this?" "Since I was 12, Hana said without looking away from the screens. "Earth's Shadow Command recruits young. They need people who can blend in, who can be underestimated. Humans are perfect for that role in the coalition." 12 years old, Jinwoo repeated slowly. He had taken a position by the door, his rifle aimed at the corridor. "They turned you into a weapon when you were a child. They gave me a purpose," Hana corrected. "After humans joined the coalition, we realized something important. Every other species looked at us and saw weakness. Small bodies, fragile bones, slow healing. They assumed we couldn't fight. But humans have been fighting for thousands of years. We perfected combat when these aliens were still living in caves on their homeworlds." Another alert flashed on the screen. More Korth soldiers were gathering 3 levels down, preparing for a major assault. Hana quickly entered commands and sealed several corridors, forcing the enemy to take a longer route. It would buy them 5 minutes, maybe. "The beauty of being underestimated," Hana continued, "is that nobody sees you coming. For 3 months I've been mapping this station, identifying conspirators, gathering evidence. All while everyone laughed at the weak human who couldn't throw a proper punch." "What about us?" Mayan asked. "Were we part of your cover? Part of the mission?" Hana finally looked at them. Her cold operative eyes softened slightly. "At first, yes. I needed to maintain the act around everyone. But you two actually tried to help me. Even when you thought I was hopeless, you still cared. That meant something." The sound of boots echoed in the corridor. Multiple footsteps getting closer. Hana moved to her position and raised her weapon. "Incoming. Remember your training. Controlled bursts. Don't waste ammunition." The Korth burst through the corridor in a coordinated assault. They had learned from their previous failures and were using proper military tactics now. They threw flashbang grenades and used suppressing fire. They moved in teams with overlapping fields of fire, but Hana had been fighting trained soldiers since she was a teenager. She called out positions and weak points to Jinwoo and Mayan, coordinating their defense. When the Korth tried to flank, she was already there to stop them. When they focused their fire on one position, she struck from another angle. The battle lasted 8 minutes. When it ended, 15 Korth soldiers were down, and the three humans were still standing. Barely. Jinwoo had taken a shot to his armor that cracked 2 ribs. Mian's left arm was burned from a plasma blast that had come too close. Hana had a deep cut across her shoulder that she had wrapped with torn fabric from her uniform. Coalition fleet is 2 minutes out, Hana reported, checking the displays. The Korth know they're about to lose. They'll make one final push to try to take this command center. How many do you think they'll send? Jinwoo asked, pain clear in his voice. Hana pulled up the security feeds. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. All of them. Every Korth soldier on the station. Maybe 60, 70 targets. We can't fight that many, Mayan said. Even you can't fight that many. No, Hana agreed. But I can slow them down long enough for the fleet to arrive. She moved to the command console and started typing. I'm locking you both in the secondary control room. You'll be safe there until... Absolutely not, Jinwoo interrupted. He pushed himself upright, despite the pain in his ribs. We're not leaving you. This isn't a debate. I'm ordering you. You're not our commanding officer, Mayan cut in. We're trainees, remember? We don't have to follow your orders. And we're not abandoning you to die alone. Hana looked at them both. For just a moment, the mask slipped completely. She wasn't Captain Hana Kim, covert operative. She was just Hana, a woman who had spent most of her life alone, pretending to be something she wasn't. I don't want you to die for me, she said quietly. Then we won't die, Jinwoo said with a tired smile. We'll fight, together, and we'll survive, together. The sound of many boots echoed through the corridors. The final assault was coming. The 3 humans took their positions. They had limited ammunition and were exhausted. But they were still standing, and they would fight until the end. The Korth army hit the command center like a tsunami. They came from multiple directions, using heavy weapons and coordinated tactics. The doors started to buckle under sustained fire. The walls shook. The defensive barriers began to fail. Hana moved through the chaos like she had been born for this moment. She used every technique she had spent her life mastering. When her pistol ran empty, she switched to her knives. When her knives were lost, she used her hands and feet. She moved like water, like shadow, like death itself. Jinwoo and Mayan fought beside her, following her commands and covering her movements. They weren't trained operatives like her, but they learned fast. And they were human. They had that same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried their species through thousands of years of war and survival. The battle reached a critical point. Too many enemies, too little ammunition. The Korth were about to overwhelm them. Hana prepared for a final stand, ready to sell her life as expensively as possible. Then the entire station shook with a different kind of impact. Not explosions. Docking clamps. The coalition fleet had arrived. Within seconds, the corridor outside the command center filled with coalition marines. They poured in like an avenging army, pushing the Korth back. The tide of battle shifted instantly. A squad of marines burst into the command center, weapons ready. Their leader was a Vrax commander who looked at the scene with shock. 3 humans stood among dozens of Korth bodies, bleeding and exhausted, but still standing. Status report, the commander demanded. Hana straightened, despite her wounds. Captain Hana Kim, Earth Shadow Command. Mission successful. The conspiracy within the Guardian Corps has been exposed. Commander Tholvex and 17 other coalition personnel were working with the Korth Dominion. All evidence has been secured. The Vrax commander stared at her. He looked at the bodies. He looked at the battle-scarred command center. He looked back at Hana. You're the trainee? He said slowly. The one ranked last. The weak human. Hannah allowed herself a small, tired smile. Yes, sir. That was the cover story. The next few hours were chaos. Medical teams treated the wounded. Security forces arrested the surviving conspirators. Coalition investigators swarmed the station, gathering evidence. The story of what happened spread quickly through Threshold 9 and beyond. 3 days later, Hannah stood in the station's rebuilt command center. Her wounds were healing. Jinwoo and Mayan stood beside her, both recovered enough to walk without help. Facing them was a panel of Coalition High Command, including admirals and generals from multiple species. The head of the panel, an elderly Kelf admiral, spoke. Captain Kim, your actions have prevented what could have been a catastrophic blow to Coalition security. The Korth infiltration was far more extensive than we knew. Your intelligence gathering and the evidence you secured will allow us to root out the remaining conspirators. Thank you. Sir, Hannah said formally, we are prepared to offer you a full commission as an instructor in the Guardian Corps. The Admiral continued, your combat skills and tactical knowledge would be invaluable to training the next generation of Guardians. Hannah was silent for a moment. With respect, sir, I must decline. My work isn't finished. There are other missions that require my particular skill set. The Admiral nodded, as if he had expected that answer. Then we offer an alternative. Earth's Shadow Command has requested authorization to expand its operations. They wish to train more operatives in your methods. The Coalition is prepared to approve this request and provide resources. What kind of resources? Facilities, equipment, and most importantly, students. The Admiral gestured to a screen that showed images of various alien species. Many of our peoples now wish to learn from humans. They want to understand the combat arts that allowed 3 trainees to hold off an army. Hannah looked at Jinwoo and Mayan. They both nodded. I'll need to train instructors first, Hannah said. Humans who understand not just the techniques, but the philosophy behind them. It will take time. We have time, the Admiral said. The galaxy is changing, Captain Kim. For decades, humans were seen as the weakest members of the Coalition. After today, that perception will never be the same. 6 months later, Hannah stood on an observation deck overlooking a new training facility built on Threshold 9. Below her, Jinwoo led a class of mixed-species students through basic striking techniques. The students were clumsy at first, but they were learning. Mayan appeared beside her, carrying a datapad. We have 17 more applications from alien cadets wanting to train under human instructors. Also, Earth's Shadow Command wants to send 20 new candidates for advanced operative training. Approve them all, Hannah said. She watched as a large Brontu student attempted a technique and fell flat on his face. Jinwoo helped him up patiently, demonstrating the proper form. Everyone deserves a chance to learn. Even after what they did to us? Mayan asked quietly. All those months of mockery and abuse? Especially because of that, Hannah replied. They didn't know any better. They believed the lie because we sold it so well. Now we teach them the truth. Strength isn't about size or natural weapons. It's about discipline, training, and the will to never give up. A young human trainee approached them nervously. She looked barely 18, fresh from Earth. Excuse me, Captain Kim? I'm supposed to report for operative training. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. Hannah studied the girl. She saw herself at that age. Scared but determined. Ready to become something more. What's your name? Soman Lee, ma'am. Tell me, Soman, do you think you're weak? The girl hesitated. Everyone says humans are the weakest species in the Coalition. Hannah smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. Good. Let them think that. We'll teach you how to make that work for you. Because the greatest weapon humanity has is that we're always underestimated. Until we're not. She looked back out at the training facility, at the mixed groups of humans and aliens learning to fight together, at Jinwoo patiently teaching an advanced grappling technique to a student who towered over him, at the future they were building. They had called her weak. They had laughed at her. They had dismissed humanity as too fragile, too small, too soft to be real warriors. But Hana Kim had proven them wrong. And now she would teach an entire generation to do the same. The weak had become the guardian. And the galaxy would never underestimate humanity.